Hello guys, how are you all? Welcome back to my channel. So, today we are gonna see, what if Naruto left Konoha after the abuse and returned at age 11 powerful, part 1. So before we start, please go check out the author of this fanfic, Crimson Cat 101, link is in the description, also subscribe to our channel and like this video, so let's begin the video. Naruto raced through the bustling streets of Konoha, his heart pounding in his chest and his breathing rushed from exhaustion. I'm so late. The young blonde boy dodged the moving figures as he made his way to the academy. It was his first day and he didn't want to make a bad impression. He is 6 years old now. He had been living in his apartment since he was 5. The Sandium moved him there saying that something turned up at the orphanage and they could no longer care for him. At first Naruto was excited that he got to live on his own. Sandium took care of the rent and even gave him an allowance. He was about 3 blocks away from the academy doors when he bumped into a massive figure. Naruto yelped and fell on his behind, slowly moving his gaze up to the man's face. The stranger's face was twisted in anger and he roughly stood 6 feet tall. His face was rough and his hair was short and black. Once Naruto met his eyes he knew what was to come. It always did. Well, I don't believe my eyes, the person I want to see has come to see me. The man laughed, lifting Naruto by the collar of his black t-shirt. Naruto struggled, trying to break free, but was failing miserably. 2 other men stood by the one who had a firm grasp on his shirt. The both were smirking at the small blonde's predicament. So what should we do to the demon? The one said on the right of the black-haired man. Well, we should take him for a walk ride around the bend. It is the least we could do to repay him. The one on the man's left spoke, jabbing a finger towards the alley. Naruto's eyes began to water, drenching his black t-shirt. Please don't hurt me. The 6-year-old cried. The man holding him sneered, turning to his left. You know what? I think we should take him for a walk. His 2 buddies smirked at the decision. Pain. The one word summed up his entire life. The beating continued against his small body. His mind screamed to flee, but his arms were pinned to the wall by the 2 other men. Blood soaked his shirt and bruises covered his arms, legs, but mostly his gut. The man smiled in satisfaction as he looked at his handiwork. The 2 men who held him to the wall released his wrists when the man beating on him had finished. Naruto's arms dropped to his sides as his knees buckled and he fell to the ground in pain. Even when he had cried for help, few would notice and those that did just glared at him while walking away. Demon, why call for help when no one will come to your rescue? Who would care for such a monster? Naruto watched as the man squatted down to look directly at Naruto's eyes that now shed many tears. I bet not one person would care if you dropped dead right now. The people would actually celebrate over your death and I would happily dance atop your grave. Naruto cried as he watched the men leave him in his broken state. Naruto continued to cry as he watched someone walking down the alleyway. Please help me, he sobbed. The man stopped to glance at him, then continued on his way. Why? The blonde cried. He never asked for this. What had he ever done to deserve this? He winced as he got back onto his feet and staggered towards the wall for support. Uzumaki Naruto. The teacher called, receiving no answer. He had brown hair that was pulled up in a ponytail. He wore a vest and a Hittite across his forehead. He also had a distinct scar across the middle of his face and nose. Looking at the attendance sheet he began to wonder if the boy wasn't informed about his first day at the academy. He continued through the attendance, when he neared the end of the list he heard a knock on the door. The class began to chatter when he had stopped announcing the names. He went towards the door and opened it, to see no one. He was about to step out when he bumped into something. He looked down to see a young blonde boy with a bright orange jumpsuit. His blonde hair was messy and scruffy, which made him look like someone that lived on the streets. He was leaning against the wall as he stared at his teacher. Are you Naruto? The teacher questioned. The 6-year-old nodded his head and grinned. You're tardy, but I'll let it slide since it is your first day. The teacher walked over to his desk and gestured his hand to tell Naruto to come next to him. Naruto saw this and stiffened, wondering how he was supposed to walk over there with no support and not show that he was physically hurt. He already hid his bloodied shirt and bruised arms from view by wearing the orange jumpsuit on top of it. He slowly released his hand from the doorframe, trying desperately to maintain his balance without the aid. He steadily walked over toward the teacher trying to keep his back straight and his legs to move casually. He made it halfway before falling. He landed in a comical fashion making the class erupt in laughter. Naruto slowly got back on his feet and laughed loudly. Seeing his reaction the class stopped. Naruto stopped laughing and gave an ear-to-ear grin. He raised his right arm and pointed to the middle of the class. Laugh while you can because I'm going to beat everyone. Naruto, if you're done introducing yourself, there is an empty seat in the back. Haruka said, rolling his eyes at Naruto's outburst. Naruto looked to the back, which was atop the stairs. The blonde winced as he climbed the steps, each seemed to double his pain. Although he had stopped bleeding almost immediately after the incident, he still felt weak. He finally made it to the top and sat next to a girl with lavender pupil-less eyes and short hair. Naruto nervously sat down next to her. After a few seconds he decided to break the ice. "Hi, I'm Naruto. What's your name?" he said, thinking that maybe this was his chance to make a friend. "Hinata." She stuttered and her gaze dropped towards the floor. "Hi, Hinata-chan." He paused. He wasn't sure what to say, unsure on how to begin a friendly relationship. Then he noticed that she wouldn't look him in the eye. Is she afraid of me? Does she hate me already? The question bothered him to no end. While Naruto began to think, Hinata had her own thoughts. Did he just call me Hinata-chan? Hinata thought, keeping her sight on the ground. Naruto began to become uncomfortable under the silence that had befallen the conversation. "Hey," Hinata jumped a little when he began to speak. "Do you hate me?" Hinata stared in disbelief. "Why would you say that?" Hinata asked, shocked that he asked such a question. "Well, you won't look me in the eye, so I thought that maybe you're scared of me." The blonde said, his eyes now focused on his desk. "I don't hate you, Naruto-kun, I just..." "Naruto." "Hinata. Do you two even know what I've been talking about?" Iruka questioned, his arms folded and his gaze set on the two. Hinata squirmed under the angry gaze, feeling very embarrassed by the sudden attention. Naruto smiled and rubbed the back of his neck in embarrassment. "Sorry, but I'm afraid I'm not Iruka-sensei. I didn't even know that you were speaking." Iruka gaped while the class burst into laughter. Only one thought went through his mind. Oh god. This kid is holding a neon sign that spells trouble all over it. After class ended, Naruto popped the question that had been nagging at him ever since he sat next to her. "Will you be my friend?" Naruto asked. Hinata froze. She began to fiddle her fingers nervously. "I would be happy with Naruto-kun." Hinata watched as Naruto stiffened. "Really?" Naruto questioned, his hopes rising. She nodded shyly. Hinata gave a startled squeak when Naruto gave a honest smile that seemed to melt her heart. A small blush graced her facial features. "I'll be the best friend you ever had. I promise," he shouted. The two left the classroom going their separate ways. Hinata walked over to her father, Hyuga Hishi. Hishi's cold, calculating gaze fell onto Hinata. His body was stern and the way he stood showed that he had total confidence in his abilities. The two left towards the Hyuga mansion. "Hinata, how did your first day go? What did you learn?" Hishi watched as her face turned a slight shade of red. "I made a friend and I learned about the great shinobi nations," Hinata said in a voice no louder than a whisper. Hishi cocked an eyebrow at the new friend's remark but shrugged it off as non-importance. "Hinata, when we get home we got serious chakra control exercises for you to practice," he said in his usual cold monotone voice. Hinata nodded her head gingerly as they made their way home. Naruto went in the opposite direction from where Hinata headed. He walked through the streets ignoring the cold stares that followed him. The cold stares wouldn't bring down his mood today. Not when he had made his first friend. He walked to his apartment wearing a smile that no one could wipe off his face. He walked towards the banged-up apartment complex. It looked as though a bomb had been set off. It wasn't the nicest home for a 6-year-old, to say the least. He walked to his room and unlocked the door with his keys. Ignoring the spray-painted threats all over his door, he opened it. He stepped into his room and switched on the lights. He cleaned up, ate dinner, which was ramen, and read some books. He usually didn't read boring informative books, but he wanted to impress his new friend. When he started yawning, he got up and went to bed. Some of the metal springs came out of the mattress, making him rather discomforted. He turned and twisted for about an hour before he fell asleep. The past week couldn't have been any better. He still got beat up, sure, but now he had a friend. At the academy he studied hard and became an average student. On the days he was beat up, he would pull some form of a prank to cheer himself up. One of the pranks concerned the whole class. Before class, Naruto brought 10 bottles of super glue into the classroom. He super glued everything down in the room. Chairs, books, papers, tables, pencils, pens, chalk, belongings, and anything else in the room were all pasted down. When the class and the Iruka walked in, they were stunned that they weren't able to sit down or move anything. Poor Naruto couldn't keep a straight face and ended up scraping the glue off. Them and Hinata always did projects and partner activities together. Naruto got to know her throughout the week while talking with her. He always looked forward to school ever since. Until that unfortunate day, however. Naruto and Hinata left class together after Iruka had dismissed them. Hinata's father only picked her up the first day at the academy. Otherwise he would send a branch member to pick her up. Today, however, he came himself. "Hinata." The said girl jumped at hearing her name called and turned her eyes away from Naruto to her father, Hishi. "Hi." She stuttered, looking at her father. Hishi's eyes fell on the mass of blonde hair beside her. "Is this the friend you told me about?" Hishi said, his eyes were unmoving from Naruto. Naruto saw his eyes and saw that they were as cold as ice, just as many others were towards him. "Hi, father. You are to no longer speak with this disgrace," he said coldly. Hinata pleaded to her father, but he wouldn't hear any of it. He had made up his mind, and he would be too stubborn to hear otherwise. After Haishi's order, he was always seated away from her in class because the main Hyuga head had said so. When he tried to sit by her or even go near her, Iruka would stop and just shake his head. Naruto was shaken by the fact that when he had finally made a friend, he couldn't approach her. After that, his pranks continued worse than ever. His depression grew and he found himself giving more fake grins. His grades dropped instantly and he was now the dead last of his class. Nothing could make his life any worse. Or so he thought. It has been a week now since Naruto last talked to his friend, Hinata. It was during class that Naruto noticed that Iruka was occupied with talking to her. While he was busy, Naruto took the chance to speak with his friend. He sneakily approached her. So sneaky in fact that he accidentally scared her. She gave a startled squeak when she noticed the mass of blonde hair hiding under the desk. He put a finger to his lips to tell her that she needed to be quiet in order to not arouse attention. She nodded her head gingerly to show that she understood his silent gesture. Hinata began to speak in a voice quieter than the norm. Naruto-kun, I'm so sorry that my father. She now began to softly cry. I'm so sorry Naruto-kun that we can't talk and… Hinata stopped in slight shock when she felt a finger at her lips. Naruto smiled, another one of his true smiles. Don't cry Hinata-chan, it wasn't your fault. Please don't cry, it makes me sad to see you cry. It was at that moment that Iruka had finished speaking with them but quickly departed using the door to his right. Iruka turned around to face the class when he noticed that the familiar orange was missing. Hinata quickly whispered to Naruto that Iruka-sensei was going to see them when she saw the leaves. Naruto crawled under the desks in an attempt to reach his desk across the room. Some of the students kicked him while others scowled in disgust. He was about halfway when someone stopped him by standing in his way. He looked up to see a familiar face. Naruto, what are you up to? It's not another one of your pranks, is it? Iruka accused, seeing that he had been crawling under desks. Naruto shook his head left and right vigorously. Iruka glared, unsure on whether to trust the prankster. He then sighed heavily before speaking. Well, it doesn't matter now that class is over. Iruka walked over to the front of the class while Naruto got back onto his feet. Class dismissed. He was quite happy today since he had gotten a chance to talk to his friend. He walked through the streets with a happy grin on his face, ignoring the icy cold glares directed at him. She still didn't hate him either. The thought made him ecstatic as he now dashed towards his apartment. He was almost home when the air was suddenly knocked out of him and he was sent hurtling to a nearby wall. His back hit the wall dead on and his arms flung out. He then slumped down the wall, groaning in pain. He opened his eyes to see a pair of legs standing strongly in front of him. He moved his gaze upward to see a white porcelain mask. He clearly knew he was in trouble this time when he recognized that the person was an Anbu. Demon, I can no longer ignore your existence among us. So now, I will take the responsibility of ending your ever-growing evil. People witnessing the scene began to cheer at the ninja's proclamation. Naruto noticed this and his eyes suddenly became lifeless. They all want me dead. Why? I don't understand. What have I done for them to hate me so much? Maybe I should die, they would be happy, wouldn't they? The Anbu raised a kick to the side of the blonde's head in a swift rapid motion. It connected instantly. Naruto was thrown about a meter by the powerful force. The world went black as soon as he felt the impact. He skidded another meter before coming to an abrupt halt. The Anbu walked up to him with a murderous smirk plastered on his face behind the mask. He came to a halt before the vessel of the Kyuubi. Unsheathing the ninjakin from his back, he put it so it faced down vertically. He aimed it for the blonde's heart. Now die, vermin. The blade came down ready to claim the life of the young boy. When it came 2 inches before it would hit its target, the blade and its wielder were flung to the opposing wall with a force much greater than the man's own prior kick. The Anbu looked up to see who would dare interfere with his revenge on the demon. He was surprised to see one of the legends with a frown that would scare most of anyone. His arms were firmly crossed and his eyes narrowed in anger. Jiraiya-sama, why did you defend him? Don't you know who that boy is? The Anbu spat, pointing at the unconscious boy nearby. Jiraiya nearly exploded in fury. He couldn't believe the people were so blind. Now it was Jiraiya's turn to get angry. I know full well who that boy is. I can tell by his whisker-marked cheeks. That boy is your savior. Your hero. And this is how you treat him. He snapped. He then turned to everyone who witnessed the scene. This goes for all of you. Could you not trust the Yondium to completely seal the demon? What you have been treating so wrongly was an innocent 6-year-old boy. Jiraiya stalked off to the young boy and threw him over his shoulder, holding him by the collar of his clothing. The crowd that had gathered began to whisper to one another and parted for the furious Enin. The Anbu followed nervously when Jiraiya gave him a heated glare, knowing his upcoming punishment all too well. The Sandium groaned as yet another pile of paperwork was thrust atop his desk. He always dreamed that the paperwork would just disappear in a plume of smoke or be sent to burn in hell. He's done enough for today, right? He sighed before taking out his pipe and leaning back against his chair. He thought his work was over after Yondium took the job. Now here he was, signing papers once again. Damn, he had to find a successor and fast. It was then that the white-haired Senin decided to make his appearance. Sir Toby looked at the window's ledge to spot Jiraiya along with a blonde boy. The blonde hung limply under the Senin's arm. The white-haired Senin walked in and set the boy down on the floor gently. He then walked over to Sarutobi, who still had his eyes fixed upon the boy. His fingers interlaced, as he seemed to be in deep thought. Mind explaining? Jiraiya asked, anger noticeable in the tone of his voice. Sarutobi took his eyes off the boy, only to refocus them on his prior student. Before he began, he went through a series of hand seals, making it so the room was soundproof, not allowing the outside to listen in on the conversation. Well, first, do you know who the boy is? Sarutobi asked, knowing that he had to play his cards just right. Jiraiya nodded his head as an answer to the question. I know full well that the boy is Kyuubi's vessel. Sarutobi shook his head slowly. The action rattled Jiraiya's thoughts. What do you mean no? I mean, do you know the boy's family history? In other words, who is he? Sarutobi's face was calm throughout the entire conversation. He was diffusing the initial start of the argument quite nicely. He's an orphan, that is all that I know. Why do you ask? Jiraiya wondered where Sarutobi was taking the conversation. Asandium contemplated how he was supposed to deliver the news. All he knew is that he might be on the wrong side of the gun. He sighed heavily before speaking. Jiraiya, do you not recognize the similarities? Jiraiya cocked an eyebrow and turned to look at the boy. It was then that it hit him like 1,000 solid bricks. His eyes widened to a size that seemed inhuman. You're not saying that he... Hi, that is what I'm saying. The only word that Jiraiya could seem to get out is, how. Asandium relaxed in his chair and took another puff from his pipe, exhaling the smoke. Well, remember that Arashi's wife, Kumiko, was pregnant right before the battle with Kyuubi. Well, yes, but she had died before she could give birth. Jiraiya said solemnly, dropping his previous shock. I'm afraid you're mistaken. Sarutobi said. Jiraiya looked up with a sudden start. You see, that is what was reported, but the truth is, Naruto was born the same day his father sacrificed himself for the village. Kumiko went into labor when Kyuubi attacked because of the sudden stress that was put on her. Naruto was born, and Kumiko died afterward. Arashi then had to use him to seal the Kyuubi. He sealed it in his own son. Jiraiya asked, startled by the sudden turn of events. I'm afraid. It was not an easy decision for him, trust me. Although he did have a lot more faith in the people, he hoped his son would be treated as a hero, not a menace. Jiraiya continued to try to digest the new information. All of it seemed too much to take in. When the information slowly sunk in, his eyes narrowed in anger. Why wasn't I informed? Sarutobi saw this coming, but he never found the perfect answer. Jiraiya, I couldn't tell you because. Don't give me any of that crap. The Senin growled, his fists held tightly at his sides. I'm taking the kid with me. He went over to the 6-year-old boy, scooping him up and over his back. Oh, before I forget. Jiraiya disappeared through the window along with the boy. He came back with an Anbu member. The Anbu's head was hung down in shame. This is an Anbu who attempted to kill Naruto. Naruto would have been dead if I didn't happen to be passing by. The Anbu shuddered when he felt a death glare and killer intent coming from the Hokage. He was starting to regret trying to kill the boy. Not because he felt sorry for it, but rather because of the consequences that were to follow afterward. I'll let you deal with this criminal. Jiraiya turned to leave with the blonde boy still slung over his back. He jumped over the window's ledge and landed gracefully on the street's pavement. Sandium secretly smiled as he saw Jiraiya leave. That worked out better than he thought. Naruto needed to leave the village. It would make the boy's life much easier. Jiraiya was so predictable. He himself needed someone to help look after Naruto. The situation at hand made it easier, but it also made him the bad guy. The Senin walked towards Konohagakure's gates, leaving with his student son. As he walked, he heard a man shout something that made him hate the village more than he already did. Jiraiya-sama, are you going to finish the demon off? Jiraiya stopped in his tracks. Those who had heard the man shout then saw Jiraiya with the demon slung on his back and began to cheer. The demon will finally meet his end. Death to the demon. We will finally sleep in peace tonight. Hearing the cheering made Jiraiya furious, to say the least. Before he would have been angry, but now that he knew it was his prior student son, he was downright furious. No, I'm taking him with me to protect him from the likes of you. The Senin growled softly, but loud enough for everyone to hear. The crowd stopped cheering as they watched Jiraiya leave Konoha with the blonde boy. He reached the gates and didn't bother to stop. He flashed his passport to the on-guard duty, and as he walked away, he didn't care about the village's new perspective on him. He was going to train this young boy to fend for himself. Naruto's eyes flickered open to reveal blinding light. He immediately shut his eyes and brought his hand over them to hide from the light. As soon as his eyes adjusted he looked around. Then all of a sudden the memories flooded his mind and he winced. Was he dead? He looked around to see a fire. That meant someone was here. The only question is who? He sat up to further observe his surroundings. A white-haired man was approaching with some fish in hand. The man noticed that the blonde had awakened and calmly continued his approach. I see that you have awakened, the man said, sitting down by the fire and beginning to arrange the fish so that they would cook by the flame's heat. Naruto continued to blankly stare at the man. He thought about the last events that he could remember and couldn't recognize the strange man. What happened? The blonde asked. He remembered the Anbu proclaiming his death, the crowd cheering, a kick delivered to the side of his head, and then blank. He couldn't remember anymore no matter how much he tried. Well, let's see. Jiraiya began thinking about putting it into simple words that a 6-year-old could understand. I found an Anbu trying to kill you while I was passing by and decided to help you out. I then brought him to the Hokage to receive his punishment. While I was with the Sandium I decided to take you with me so that I may train you. Naruto looked at him, puzzlement visible on his face. Why? Naruto questioned. So that you can defend yourself. Naruto shook his head, which made Jiraiya cock an eyebrow at the peculiar behavior. No, I mean why help me? Jiraiya looked at the kid with some shock and then reminded himself about the villager's actions before he left. The boy must have had a rougher life than I thought. What was Sarutobi thinking? He looked back at the boy who was still waiting for his answer. What? I can't help a little boy from being killed. No, it's just Naruto began to squirm uncomfortably and his eyes began to fill with unshed tears. I thought everyone wanted me to die. Jiraiya moved his gaze away from Naruto and onto the flickering flames in the fire. Listen kid, you must be strong in order to survive in this corrupt world. There simply is no room for the weak. Just remember, there are no shortcuts in life. Wishes and dreams can only come true using your own hands. Everyone needs a dream or goal to strive for, so now I ask, what is your dream? Naruto stared at his small hands, then closed his eyes to think. A dream? What is my dream? Jiraiya waited for his answer, not tearing his gaze away from the small boy. Suddenly the blonde smiled, showing he had made his decision. I'm going to be Hokage. Naruto's eyes opened to reveal a new cerulean blue. Unlike his previous eyes, which were depressed, lonely, and hurt, these eyes were lit with a fiery determination. Jiraiya saw the eyes and thought he was seeing ghosts. Those eyes were the same as his students'. The same will and determination burned brightly in the blue hues. This made Jiraiya smile. What is your reason for wanting to be Hokage? So that everyone will start treating me with respect and start treating me like somebody and not a nobody. Naruto gave a grin at the end of his short speech. Jiraiya smiled and nodded in acceptance. It's not a great answer, but it's good for starters. He will learn more as he goes through life. I have high expectations for this boy. Jiraiya began to talk once more. Alright, let's get to work. Let me assure you, my training methods are far from easy. It will be tough, but I know you will pull through in the end. If you are ready to strive for your dream, then you will follow it through to the end. Naruto continued to stare at the man. Naruto, are you ready to begin? Jiraiya asked, and Naruto returned an affirmative nod. Alright, we start your training tomorrow, for now let's eat. Jiraiya grabbed the fish that had been roasting by the fire. He handed one to Naruto. Thank you. Jiraiya heard Naruto and nearly slapped himself. Forgive me, I am Jiraiya, also known as the legendary Toad Sennin. Jiraiya said, shouting when he got near the end. But Sennin? Naruto said innocently. Jiraiya sweat dropped but regained his composure quickly. Never mind, just eating. While they ate, Jiraiya was hit by a thought that hadn't occurred to him. Oh my god. Now that I have a student, my time for research is reduced. Jiraiya began to cry in anime-style tears. Naruto didn't notice Jiraiya's actions, but instead was having his own thoughts. A new beginning. Hinata walked to the academy as a branch member escorted her. She followed the woman in silence as they passed several blocks. They were about a block away when a blonde-haired girl and a pink-haired girl came into view. They were gossiping to each other and laughing. A raven-haired boy passed them on the way to the academy, and the girls immediately set their eyes on him and giggled. When Hinata entered the academy doors, she sat at the back where she usually did. She looked around in search of her blonde friend but didn't spot him. She waited and watched as the students filed in. None were Naruto. She continued to watch the door, hoping the whisker-marked boy would enter. When class started she got a little worried. She wondered if maybe he would be late because he was pulling a prank. She told herself this throughout the class period. When class ended she hesitantly walked up to the Iruka. Iruka-sensei. She whispered. He turned around to face the shy girl, a soft smile across his face. Do you know where Naruto-kun is? Iruka looked at her and his smile dropped. Hinata, I'm sorry to inform you like this, but Iruka showed sympathy for the girl. He knew that since Naruto was her only friend, that this news would most likely hurt her quite a bit. He sighed. He too missed the blonde mischief. Naruto has left the village temporarily due to some circumstances. The news hit Hinata instantly as her shoulders slumped and her eyes shook in silent shock. Then she remembered what he said temporarily. When will he be back? She stuttered, her eyes looking at Iruka with a sense of hope. I'm afraid that I myself don't have a clue. He looked at the girl as misery clearly filled her features. He spoke again in an attempt to cheer her up. Don't worry though, he will be back one day. We just have to be strong and wait patiently, okay? Hinata nodded and walked out the academy doors somberly. The branch member that was to escort her home was about to ask her why she had stayed after class, but when she noticed the small girl's sadness, she decided to leave her bed. They walked home in a depressing silence, Hinata's thoughts racing at the events that transpired today. She wondered many things like why he left, where did he go, and most importantly, when would he come back. Large time skip. 5 years later. Nevertheless, I'm glad to see that you've come back to us. The Sandium gave a friendly smile to the boy that stood across from his desk. The boy's blonde hair was unruly and spiked, and his cerulean eyes showed warmth, but also experience in the hardships of life. He wore a crimson trench coat over a black sleeveless top. His pants were black with many pockets for storing scrolls and equipment. A kunai holster was strapped securely to his right leg. He also wore custom shinobi sandals that were black in color. However, I'd like to know where Jiraiya is at this time. Sandium asked the 11-year-old, who only sighed before replying. Take a guess. Hiro Sennin isn't that hard to figure out. The Sandium gave a heavy sigh knowing what the boy was trying to imply, bathhouse. Naruto nodded affirmatively, bullseye. The Hokage shuffled through some papers on his desk. So I'm guessing you want to be tested to determine your rank and status as a shinobi of the leaf? Sarutobi questioned, without taking his gaze off the papers cluttered on his desk. Naruto grinned, I guess nothing gets past you, huh? The Sandium chuckled lightly, I guess not. Naruto already knew almost all the rules and laws of Konoha. If he wanted to be Hokage he had to, right? He knew that the Hokage could test a person, however he chose to determine the rank of that person. This procedure was usually taken when said person was just joining the village. It could also be done whenever the Hokage felt it was necessary. Sandium took a puff from his pipe before continuing. Well, I'll arrange the test, I will have it ready by tomorrow. Until then, why don't look around? You have been gone for 5 years. Naruto chuckled sadly, I might want to see the village, but the village might not want to see me. Naruto, I know that it will be tough, but I know you will pull through in the end. Unlike others, you will have to work much harder to get the village's respect. I know that all too well, but thanks anyway. Naruto exited the office through the door, leaving Sandium to his thoughts. Naruto just exited the Hokage's tower, passing the 2 guards on the way. He knew he couldn't be beaten anymore, but the hatred-filled glares still put him on edge. At least now he knew why they did that. It was during his training when he was informed about the devastating secret. Flashback, 4 years ago. The force of the Sennin's attack threw Naruto back. The sparring match between the two was an all-out Taijutsu match. They continued to exchange blows. Unfortunately, Naruto continued to take the brunt of most of the attacks. Naruto took a hit to his forehead, throwing him back where he then hit his head against a tree. The force of both attacks made him dazed. Jiraiya took advantage of the moment and gave Naruto a blow to the gut. It was then that he slipped into unconsciousness, his vision blurred until the world went black. Naruto's vision began to clear as he looked at his surroundings. He was no longer in the woods, but in some type of sewer. Pipes lined the walls and ceiling, and water filled the passageways to his ankles. An unpleasant scent loomed through the passageways. If he had to describe the scent, he would say that it smelled of death and decay. While he was observing the area, a faint red glow illuminated part of the passageway. The glow seemed menacing and malevolent. The direction of the red aura was the only lead he had to get out of this place, so he cautiously walked towards it. He followed it through, and as he got closer to the source he could now hear a faint growl. He continued towards it, the growling increasing in volume, until he reached a cage that had a paper attached to it. He looked at the paper more closely, only to realize that it read seal. His gaze drifted from the seal and into the cage where an unsettling presence was felt. The pitch black within the cage was suddenly lit with large red demonic eyes. Well, look who finally decided to pay a visit. A demonic voice sneered behind the cage bars. Naruto jumped in surprise, and his eyes widened to a size that seemed inhumanly possible. What's the matter, brat? Are you perhaps frightened by my awesome power? Because you should be. For I am the great Kyuubi no Kitsune, feared throughout your lands as the greatest Bijuu in existence. Are you Kyuubi? Naruto stuttered in shock. Why yes, actually. Do you know where we are? Naruto shook his head slowly as a foxy grin stretched across Kyuubi's face. Brat, we just happened to be inside you. Me? That's right, I was not killed by that human you call the Yondium, but rather sealed within a newborn child. This newborn child just so happens to be you. Naruto looked at the demon in shock, but after a few seconds that shock turned to anger as his eyes narrowed in fury. You're the reason the villagers hate me. Naruto growled. Hi, they believe you to be I. They see you as their scapegoat for what I have wrought. Kyuubi watched as his expression became unreadable when a shadow engulfed his face. All went quiet as Kyuubi waited for the boy's reaction, however Naruto's reaction was not what he expected. You fucking bastard. You're the reason my life is such a fucking mess. That's why I feel. Kyuubi watched in amazement as the young boy began to go through a long line of insults in a rather colorful manner. After a few more minutes of the angry speech, Kyuubi decided it was best to cut him off. Alright, I get it. Now would you please cool down, unless you want to continue this rant for eternity. Naruto sent the fox a heated glare, but the fox stood passively. Good, now in return for my burden on you, I will allow you to call upon my chakra when I feel it is necessary. For you see, if you die, I will die. I have no intention of dying, so I will help you out when it comes to the matter of my well-being. Now that that's cleared up, you should wake up right now. If you have any questions, ask your sensei, he's known all along. When Kyuubi finished speaking, Naruto blinked and found himself in the woods. Naruto sat up and went to talk to his sensei about his experience. Flashback end. Alright, now where to? He continued walking through the streets of Konoha until an enticing scent filled his nostrils. He sniffed once, twice. Those that were glaring at him saw him sniffing the air and immediately wondered what he was doing. The blonde began to walk in a different direction, following the scent that filled the air. AM sighed. They haven't had any customers and they were due to go out of business any day now. It was then that she noticed a blonde boy walking towards their stand. Tucci saw her and looked in the same direction. Sure enough, Naruto came to a halt before the ramen bar. The two stared at the blonde in astonishment as he now sat across the counter. I haven't been here in a long while. I sure have missed this place, Naruto said, a reminiscing smile playing across his face. He remembered when he was little that this place was his only sanctuary. It was the only place that didn't kick him out or raise their prices ridiculously high. Tucci and AM were always kind and cheerful towards him, and for that he was grateful. Tucci looked at him curiously, then he saw his whisker-marked cheeks and knew immediately who he was. He held no anger against the boy. He could plainly see that he was innocent, unlike many other ignorant people. He believed in the Yondium's abilities, having total confidence in the previous Hokage. He saw the boy as a hero, like he was supposed to be viewed. This place has indeed been quiet since you left, Naruto. I'm very glad to see you're back healthy and well. Tucci said, a caring smile directed at the young blonde. AM gave him a cheerful smile, agreeing with Tucci. Naruto ordered a bowl of ramen and the two began to prepare it. Naruto talked to them as the food was being prepared, telling him where he's been and what he has been doing. He left out the training he did with Jiraiya and gave them a very broad explanation. They were happy nonetheless and handed him his bowl of miso ramen. Itadakimasu, Naruto said, breaking apart his chopsticks and devouring the bowl of ramen in seconds. Tucci and AM smiled cheerily, seeing that life has been brought back to the quiet ramen stand. Naruto asked for a second bowl and Tucci chuckled heartily. I see that your appetite hasn't decreased in the years. A good thing for us, because we were going to close down shop due to the lack of profit and customers. Naruto gulped down the ramen present in his mouth before speaking. How could you get no customers with the good ramen you make? Tucci smiled, don't worry. Now that you're back, I foresee a better business. Naruto nodded and grinned, asking for a third bowl, handing AM his second. Naruto started to regret eating 7 bowls of ramen when his stomach began to send him painful aches. He cringed slightly as he walked to his old apartment. He wondered if it would even be in a livable condition. He sighed, he knew what to expect from the citizens of Konoha. He reached his room, unlocking it with a set of keys given to him by the Sandium, but not before noticing the insult spray painted on his door. He ignored them as he walked in, shutting the door and flicking on the lights. To his horror, the furniture was upturned and thrown against the wall, some things were broken and smashed, and more threats were present on the walls and floors. The threats were usually the same, like die demon, evil incarnate, or cold-blooded murder. At first the threats made him depressed, scared and confused, but now he thought nothing of it. He wasn't going to get all depressed because he knew that it wouldn't change anything. He knew the quickest way to solve his current predicament, so he began the hand seals, Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. 5 shadow clones puffed into existence, crowding the rather small apartment. Jiraiya had taught him the Kenjutsu because he felt that it would help with his training, alongside with a few other forbidden techniques. The clones were solid, unlike the regular academy that taught Bunshin. These Kage Bunshin had their own chakra system, allowing them to use, however their chakra supply was rather limited. Jiraiya also told him when they were destroyed, the memories of their small lifespan were transferred directly to him. Jiraiya warned that too much information would put strain on his mind and may knock him unconscious. Naruto listened to his advice, but would do it occasionally anyway. He would create many shadow clones, practice something, destroy them when depleted of chakra, absorb the information, and then fall unconscious. When Jiraiya scolded him several times, he made sure not to do it too often. The 5 shadow clones set to work, cleaning, sweeping, and throwing away what was broken beyond repair. The real Naruto walked to his room dodging one of his clones that was carrying a battered and broken chair. He entered, the clone still busy in the living room kitchen, and began to look at the damage. His bed was placed on its side against the wall, and the spring mattress was stabbed and laid completely useless in the center of the room. His clothing that were previously hung in his closet were now burned to ashes, not that he wanted the clothing anyway, he had actually grown in the past 4 years to a height of 4'10". How did he grow? Jiraiya simply took away his all-ramen diet, making him eat properly during their trip. Naruto began to clean his room when he noticed a face-down picture frame with tiny glass shards surrounding it in the corner of his eye. Naruto instantly stopped what he was doing and ran toward the said object, but careful as to not step on the glass. He kneeled down and carefully picked it up, turning it over to reveal the picture. The picture was of Yondium Hokage, Naruto's biggest role model. The Yondium may be the one that had caused him to suffer so much, but he was the one to sacrifice himself and Naruto for the sake of the village. Jiraiya told Naruto that he was the Yondium sensei, and Naruto was like him in some ways. When Naruto learned about the Kyuubi, he couldn't help but be angry with the great Hokage. I mean, he was the one that partly caused his suffering. Eventually he decided that the Yondium had no other choice at the time and began to idolize him again. I wonder what you would do in my situation. Naruto took out the picture and put it on the desk that was still left intact in his room. A clone walked in and began to sweep up the shattered glass as the real Naruto stood out of its way. Naruto walked back into his living room, noticing that the clones were just finishing up and had begun to clean the bedroom and bathroom. Naruto casually plopped down on the couch and pulled out a small scroll from his pants pocket. He unrolled it and without looking at its contents, bit his thumb and ran a trail of blood down the center of the text. Instantly a brush, a small container of black paint, and a notebook appeared in his hands. He walked over to his door, setting the notebook down in the container of paint. He opened the plastic container and dripped several drops of his blood in the ink. He then dipped his brush in its contents. With his other hand he flipped through his notebook until it reached a certain page. He looked at his personal notes and began to paint a seal on the door. The notebook held his seal designs and notes on each one. Studying and analyzing seals were more of a personal hobby of his, rather than something he was taught. Jiraiya never learned of Naruto's hobby because he usually did it in secret. He was no seal master, but he could do some fairly complicated seals. He created several original seals through trial and error. He had to do it in a large area because sometimes they backfired, sometimes quite harmfully. He finished the seal on the door, when it was completed it vanished. Naruto sat up and began to paint the same seal on his windows. The seal that he was writing was one he created himself, a fairly basic seal. The seal would simply alert him when a person touched or went near the seal. It would alert him the same way a cage bunshin would when it disappeared. The information would simply be sent to his mind because his blood was used in the creation of the seal. He also made it so that it would explode on the intruder. Once he finished securing his apartment, he laid back down on the couch. The shadow clones finished cleaning and repairing what they could and vanished. Naruto began to fall asleep on the couch because his bed no longer had a mattress. He thought about the Sandium's test, but eventually gave in to the long-awaited rest. Hokage's office the next morning. The Sandium interlaced his fingers as he stared at a silver-haired who leaned against the wall in a lazy manner. So you are the one I chose to hold the test for him, just make sure not to underestimate him. The Sandium cautioned the who gave nothing but a respectful nod. With that the shoe shined out of the room with an audible poof. Sandium turned his head towards the open window in his office as a white-haired man entered via the window. I see you finally decided to come visit. The Sandium watched as the Sennin casually walked to the center of the office. I bring some more information on the Akatsuki, as well as Odo and Suna. Jiraiya said sternly, making the Hokage curious. Suna and Odo, you say? Jiraiya nodded. I heard from my information network that Suna and Odo have been having talks concerning our village. These secret meetings have been about the Chunin exams being held in our village soon. I fear a secret alliance has been formed between the two. The Hokage nodded, I will look into that right away. Now what about Akatsuki? It seems they are coming out of the dark and revealing themselves. Their goal has something to do with the tailed beasts, as it seems the 4 tailed beasts have been reported missing after being seen with 2 people dressed in cloaks with red clouds. This does not fare well at all. We will have to continue watching their actions carefully. The Sandium concluded. A brief silence was held for but a second. Jiraiya, what do you have to report about Naruto? Let's see, we mostly stayed in Hai no Kuni, Fire Country, but we traveled to Kaminari no Kuni, Lightning Country, for some training, as well as Mizu no Kuni, Water Country. Although Naruto may be only 11, be sure not to underestimate him, because I feel you will be fairly impressed with Naruto's improvement. He was slow at learning at first, but after about a year he began to improve considerably well. Jiraiya explained, finishing with a proud smile. I see. What rank do you believe he is at? Sandium asked with curiosity laced into his voice of authority. I would say. Jiraiya closed his mouth and smiled mischievously at his previous sensei. You know what? You will just have to wait and see at his test. The Sandium sighed, alright, have it your way, you're dismissed. Jiraiya left through the window as Sandium shuffled through some papers on his desk. Izumo, at the Hokage's call, shoeshined into the office. Hi, Hokage-sama. Inform Naruto to be at training field 21 for his test today at 2 p.m. Hi. They poofed out of the office as the Sandium went back to signing papers. This test will definitely be an interesting one, but why do I have the feeling that it will increase my paperwork? The Sandium shrugged off the ominous feeling and continued his paperwork. Naruto awoke from his sleep and tiredly walked to his kitchen. He opened the small fridge only to see nothing in it. He groaned, he had forgotten to buy more food after his apartment was torn apart by some unknown intruder. Grumbling, he shut the fridge door and walked to the bathroom to wash up. He took a shower, brushed his teeth, and somewhat brushed his hair. He walked out of his bathroom in a towel and over to his bedroom. He got dressed in his black sleeveless top, black pants, and dark shinobi sandals. After doing so, he threw the crimson trench coat over his top to finish. After getting dressed, he walked into the small living room and grabbed his frog wallet before walking out the door to do the most dreadful thing he could think of at the moment. Shopping. He walked to the marketplace near the center of town and got to work. Before he even did any shopping, he used a simple henge to change his appearance to that of any ordinary civilian. Now that his cover was finished, he set to work by stopping by the grocery store first. He grabbed some fruits and vegetables in order to keep his more balanced diet. After he finished there, he went through several other stores to replace the things that were destroyed in his apartment. To transport the many objects, he simply sealed them in a scroll, which made him happily walk home with only a light paper scroll in his right hand. He dropped the henge after he left the marketplace, and that's when the message of an intruder reached his mind. He speedily raced to his apartment, only to find that his door was quite scorched along with part of the wall. Naruto carefully unlocked the door and walked in. He immediately began to search for the intruder by searching his living room, bathroom, and bedroom. After reaching the conclusion that the intruder was scared off, he smirked. The seal he used as security was a success. He happily opened the scroll from his shopping trip and began to put away the food and belongings before sitting comfortably on his brand new couch. He sat there for a moment in thought before walking over to his new small wooden desk. He opened his notebook and began to study the seals he had created and sketched some new possible seals he would have to test out later. He ate an apple as a late breakfast as he studied the seals. The Sandium sat at his desk, leisurely leaning back against his chair and puffing on the pipe in his mouth. He looked at the clock in his office that now read 11 a.m. He was about to get to work on today's paperwork but was stopped by the poof of someone entering his office through Shushin. To say that stood before him was a mess would be a huge understatement. The Chunin's clothing was tattered and scorched and he smelled of gunpowder. Izumo, what happened? Sarutobi demanded, looking at the ragged form before him. Izumo scowled as he retold the story. Hokage-sama, I set out to do the task you gave me, to inform Naruto of your order. I arrived at his apartment and proceeded to knock on his door. When no one had answered, I touched his doorknob and the thing exploded. After that I fled here to inform you. The Sandium sighed heavily, alright, I will go myself. I wanted to get out of this stuffy office anyway. You are dismissed, Izumo. Though I suggest you visit the Konoha hospital before you do anything else. They nodded and left in a puff of smoke, leaving the Hokage in his office. Sarutobi put on his Hokage hat and walked out of his office, on his way to see Naruto. Naruto was studying his seals when he heard a knock on the door. He casually approached his door and opened it. Oh. Old man, what are you doing here? Naruto asked, standing in his doorway and looking at the Hokage who stood before him with a smile on his face. Hello Naruto, I'm here to inform you that you will be at training field 21 for your test today at 2 p.m. Sandium smiled, while Naruto looked at him in confusion. Shouldn't you send some type of messenger for that or something? I'm afraid I did, Naruto, but he was somehow blown up in the process. Naruto sheepishly grinned while rubbing the back of his neck with one hand. Sorry about that. The Sandium smiled again, it is quite alright. May I come in? Naruto stood away from the doorway and gestured for the Hokage to enter. The seal that protected him from intruders would not go off as long as he was in the apartment himself. Naruto plopped himself on his couch while Sarutobi continued to stand. Naruto, I would like to know how you blew up my messenger. The Hokage asked. He added mentally, even if it did save me from paperwork. Naruto grinned sheepishly. I kind of set up a security system to stop any more intruders from barging into my house. Sarutobi nodded in acceptance as he observed Naruto's small apartment. Although he was curious, he knew that Naruto did not want to evaluate further, so he changed the topic. How do you feel about being back in Konoha? Sandium questioned. Naruto paused, startled by such an abrupt change in the topic and sighed heavily. I'm not sure, I haven't been here long enough, but what I do know is that those hateful glares won't go away on their own, even after all these years. Sarutobi was shocked to hear Naruto's voice sounded so old. The kid was only 11, yet he sounded like he was much older than that. Sarutobi knew that Naruto had lost his childhood way too early in his life. So much pain was reflected in his cerulean eyes that he had to look away. Naruto, don't give up just yet. You don't have to tell me that, anyway. Who is my opponent for my test today? Naruto interrupted, changing the subject once more. Sarutobi chuckled lightly. Ah, curious now, aren't we? Well, he is one of our finest, his name is Hada Kakashi, and he will be the one to test you. Naruto stayed silent for a moment. I see, thank you. Will you be taking your leave now? Naruto asked, amusement clearly defined in the tone of his voice. The Sandium wondered what he found so amusing about the Jounin's name, but took his leave. Goodbye Naruto, I wish you luck on your test. Naruto watched as the Hokage left and turned back to his desk. He sat down on a chair and looked back at his notes. Great, I have 2 hours to make a new seal. Naruto grumbled to no one in particular. Kurenai, Asuma, and Genma waited patiently on training field 21. It was 2 p.m. now and Kakashi and the one to be tested were nowhere in sight. They stood in an uncomfortable silence until Genma spoke. You know, we are probably going to be waiting here for another 3 hours for Kakashi to show up. Genma turned his gaze to Asuma, who had his eyes set on the clouds in the horizon. Nah, we made sure to tell him to come here at 12 p.m, so he should be here any minute now. Just as Asuma finished speaking, Kakashi arrived in a swirl of leaves. Yo. He chirped, giving a friendly wave to the examiners of the test. Kakashi looked at them and then looked around the area. After thoroughly observing his surroundings, he looked back at the three. Where's Naruto? Kurenai was the one to reply. Is that the one being tested? Well, actually, he hasn't arrived yet. Kakashi's eyes widened to the size of dinner plates. This kid broke my late record. Unknowing that Naruto was told to come 3 hours after him. After 15 minutes of waiting, a kid with blonde hair, blue eyes, and whisker-marked cheeks entered the grounds. He stood in front of the examiners and his tester, grinning sheepishly. I'm sorry I'm late, I had something important to get done. Naruto said guiltily, feeling a bit nervous in front of the four. Kurenai waved him off and smiled. As long as you're not 3 hours late and making lame excuses, it is overlooked. Kakashi felt a heated glare directed at him, but kept his nose in his little orange book in an attempt to ignore it. Naruto noticed the spike in killer intent and looked at where it was directed. A spiky silver-haired was the target of the women's glare. Naruto recognized him as Kakashi, especially when he saw the hit eye that covered his left eye. The lower half of his face was also hidden from view by a thin mask. This only made Naruto curious as to what he was hiding. It was then that Naruto noticed the orange book in his hands, making his left eyebrow visibly twitch. Great, I'm fighting one of Iro-sennin's perverted book fans. Before anyone could say anything, Naruto walked to the middle of the opening. Well, let's get this over with, shall we? The porno lover looked at the three examiners before appearing in the middle of the field in a swirl of leaves, the book still held in front of his face. Naruto stared at him for a minute before asking, are you going to put that book away? The silver-haired kept his eyes on the text as he replied, no, I'm at a good part in the story and I can fight just fine with it out. Boy, is he going to regret underestimating me. Naruto thought. The examiners watched as Naruto shrugged and said, your decision. When that was said, Kakashi suddenly heard a whirring sound behind him. He dodged the surprise attack as quickly as he could, getting 2 small cuts on his shoulder as a reward. After narrowly dodging the kunai, he looked at Naruto who stood before him and watched as he disappeared in a plume of smoke. Page Bunshin. Kakashi thought, pocketing his beloved book after realizing that he couldn't read it in this fight. Kakashi took out a kunai and held it in his right hand in a defensive stance, awaiting his opponent's next move. Naruto watched Kakashi as he planned his next course of action, hidden in the branches of a tree. After deciding on a strategy, he set to work. After creating several shadow clones, telling them the course of action, and watching them dash off through the trees, he prepared a. Naruto flew through several hand seals before softly whispering, Suiton. Uarashi no Jutsu, water style. Hurricane technique, 2 small hurricanes formed, 1 in each hand, hovering approximately 1 inch over both palms. He took the hurricane in his right hand and brought it over his left. He began sliding his right hurricane over the left in a rapid fluid motion. Highly concentrated water disc shot off the end in quick succession. Kakashi was on high alert when he saw the water discs rapidly approaching him. The discs were fast and there were many of them. The silver-haired dodged each one in a graceful manner, but the last few caught him off guard. Unlike the previous ones, these were slightly faster, making him miscalculate when to dodge. He was nicked by a few on his legs and arms. The discs were as sharp as the ordinary kunai, with so many of them it was quite a formidable attack. The last disc came into view, and what shocked Kakashi was that this disc was as large as a shuriken. Naruto watched as his part of the plan finished. He leaned back against the bark of the tree in order to get a quick breather. That last took quite a bit of chakra, since he pulled the water necessary for the move out of the air. After breathing for a moment, he took off again in order to change his location. After that attack, Kakashi was bound to know where he was hiding. The shadow clones on the opposite side of the original Naruto began their part of the plan, as several went through hand seals. After finishing the necessary hand seals, the head cage Bunshin muttered under his breath, Katen. Kasoku no Jutsu, fire style. Flaming wheel technique. Kakashi was unable to dodge the large water disc so easily, so he jumped over it. The disc continued on its way and cut almost halfway through a tree before exploding back to many water droplets. While Kakashi was still in the airborne, he caught the sight of something quickly approaching him from behind. Before he could even react, his back was burned by some fire technique. Kakashi landed on his feet, stopping himself from skidding any farther by using his left hand. The left side of his back was burned by the last attack. From a distance of the battle, Asuma whistled, impressed by the young blonde. Wow, the kid's kicking Kakashi's butt. I'm enjoying this, it's about time Kakashi's karma kicked in. Kurenai added. Genma looked at the two, and then back at the battle. Yeah, but you know the kid got an advantage over him when Kakashi underestimated him. Now he's going to get serious. Hi, but he took advantage of that weakness, and that gives him points in my book. Kurenai smiled, turning her gaze back to the battle. Kakashi's breathing was heavier as he warily watched his surroundings. It was then that many shuriken were thrown at him from both sides. Naruto watched from a distance as the projectiles his clones threw approached their intended mark. The shuriken hit the copy nin directly, embedding themselves in his arms. Before Naruto could celebrate, the target was replaced by a log with the many shurikens still lodged in it. Shit, Kawarimi. Where is he? Naruto thought, sitting on the branch of a tree and frantically searching his surroundings. It was then that he felt a punch land solidly against his cheek. Naruto was thrown out of hiding and into the clearing, where Kakashi slowly approached. You're not bad. Kakashi remarked, still feeling pain from the wounds inflicted on him. I could say the same myself. Naruto said, taking a taijutsu stance that Kakashi did not recognize. Kakashi lifted his hit I-8 to reveal the infamous Sharingan. I think it's time I got serious. Naruto smirked, it's about time. The two charged at each other, exchanging blows from one another. Both of their attacks were swift and quick, both showed no signs of backing down. After a full minute, the two jumped away from each other to breathe. It was then that Kakashi gave the blonde a confused look. What did you do to my Sharingan? The examiners looked at the copy nin and Naruto with curiosity and interest. What do you mean? Naruto said innocently, still holding his fighting position. He was jumping in joy inside that his new seal's first trial run was a success, but he didn't show that. I mean, I can't memorize your moves. Usually the Sharingan allows me to memorize your moves and store them for my own personal usage, but right now I can't seem to even recall anything. I can't even see where your attacks will land beforehand, and the memorizing part of it is not working. What did you do? Kakashi asked, uncharacteristically serious in his tone of voice. Naruto held his emotionless mask as he said, why should I say? You're my opponent at the moment, aren't you? Genma looked at the other two examiners of the fight. How did he do that? Beats me. Asuma replied, looking at Kurenai expectantly, awaiting to hear her opinion on the matter. Well, whatever he did, he's not telling his opponent. He's smart about withholding what he did in battle, instead of telling his opponent exactly what he did. If he did, his opponent would know more about the situation and form a plan to override him. Usually a person would gloat about their actions, stand there, and tell their opponent exactly what they did. This action then leads to their inevitable downfall. Kurenai said her gaze was still locked on the two combatants. Asuma turned his gaze from the red-eyed beauty and back to the match. Smart kid. Genma nodded silently in agreement while fiddling with the on the side of his mouth. Naruto faced up but then turned his gaze to the examiners, still keeping his guard up. I have a question. Should I take off my weights? Naruto yelled across the field, making the examiners look at him in shock, as well as Kakashi. Genma was the one to answer. Hi, we want to see you at your full potential, so that we may rank you accordingly. How come you didn't ask this before we started? Naruto grinned sheepishly, I kinda forgot about them. The group sweat dropped at the remark, but regained focus shortly after. Naruto bit his thumb, flashed through some hand seals, and then touched the tiny red seals on both of his ankles and arms. The tiny red seals were created by Jiraiya because they were more efficient than regular weights. 1. They were easy to enable and disable. 2. It didn't show his opponent how much weight he was carrying. And 3. It wouldn't have a limit to how much weight he could carry. They watched as he quickly finished and looked at him. Resourceful, Asuma commented, I like it. The other two nodded in agreement. Naruto got back into his fighting stance, let's continue. Naruto disappeared before Kakashi's eyes, too quick to track. Naruto delivered a swift kick to Kakashi's waist and watched as he skidded across the hard earth. Naruto quickly charged towards him, but the copy nin vanished in a puff of smoke. Page Bunshin. When did Naruto cut off his own thoughts as he searched for his opponent? Behind, above, below. At that moment instinct kicked in and he quickly flashed through some hand seals. Raiden. Tsuchi Denryu no Jutsu, lightning style. Ground current technique, Naruto's palm began to form an electrical current as it was quickly thrust down upon the earth. At that second, a very angry silver-haired popped out of the ground, a meter away from Naruto. Naruto smirked as he saw Kakashi's fingers twitch from the electrical shock. The last move cost yet more chakra, so he decided it would be best to go into Taijutsu in order to give his chakra reserve some time to recuperate. Before Naruto realized what was happening, Kakashi charged at him and threw a kick to the blonde's head. It hit its intended mark, throwing Naruto across the field. Naruto groggily got up, shaking his head to get rid of the receding pain. Kakashi took advantage of his momentary recovery and charged forward. Naruto just got back on his feet when he saw Kakashi's attempt to kick him again on the side of his head. This time he didn't allow it and caught the kick while pushing it away. This action threw Kakashi off balance, allowing Naruto to kick him below his chin, sending him skyrocketing into the air. Kakashi then flipped over using one hand to regain his footing. The two stared at each other, both of their breathing labored from exhaustion. Kakashi looked at the blonde and thought. This kid, I can barely keep up with him, even with my Sharingan. I have to finish this. Naruto thought as he charged once more toward it, drawing a kunai in the process. He added chakra to his feet in order to quicken his pace as he moved behind Kakashi. Gripping the kunai in hand, Naruto attempted to punch Kakashi's face, but was stopped by the Jounin's palm. Kakashi then countered by delivering a kick to his waist. Naruto continued the assault nonetheless by prodding Kakashi on his shoulder. What is this? Kakashi thought in horror as he was unable to move his body. As the silver-haired struggled in futility, he suddenly felt the presence of cold metal against his throat. This is over, I win. Naruto said as he withdrew his kunai and backed away from the startled. Kurenai, Asuma, and Genma approached the two. Asuma walked over to Kakashi as the other two strolled over to Naruto. The kid is tough, isn't he? Asuma chuckled as he watched Kakashi pull his hit eye back over his eye. But he is definitely strong for such an age. Kakashi watched Naruto as he chatted with the two examiners. Want me to carry you to the hospital? That would be greatly appreciated. Kakashi said as he promptly fell over and was caught by Asuma as he threw him over his back, piggyback style. Asuma was about to take off when Kakashi interrupted. Hey, hold on, let me talk to Naruto first. Asuma complied and walked over to Naruto. Genma and Kurenai left after telling Naruto to visit the Hokage the next day to learn of his results and also giving him his hit eye. Naruto had tied the hit eye around his neck proudly before seeing the two Jounins leave. Hey Naruto. Naruto turned around to face Asuma and Kakashi, who was looking at him from the smoking Jounin's back. Yeah. How did you immobilize me for that brief second during the fight? Also, how did you do that to my Sharingan? For the immobilizing thing, all I did was simply send some electricity through your nervous system to paralyze you momentarily when I prodded your shoulder. As for the Sharingan, that's my little secret. Naruto grinned at the two. I see what Kakashi said as he thought about what Naruto had just told him. Hey Kakashi, why are you being carried by Asuma? Well, I kinda overused the Sharingan during the fight and now can't move my body due to chakra exhaustion. Kakashi simply stated, making Naruto nod in understanding. After that, Asuma took Kakashi to the Konoha hospital as Naruto began heading home. Naruto looked at both of his wrists where two red seals were placed on. Well, at least I found out this seal works well against the Sharingan. He was quite satisfied with the fight. Kakashi was a strong opponent as he now walked exhaustingly to his bed. He thought over the fight, replaying it over and over again until he finally succumbed to sleep. Kurenai, Asuma, and Genma now stood, lined up before the Hokage. It was an hour after the test had finished. Asuma had already delivered Kakashi to the hospital after the battle with Naruto. Kakashi's burn mark on his back could be healed effortlessly with the help of the medic nuns at the hospital. It would heal well enough that one would not notice he had been burned there before without intense searching. He was also suffering from minor chakra exhaustion, but it was nothing serious, he would recover from it completely within an hour. They stood now before the Hokage to report Naruto's test results to determine his rank and status as a shinobi of the leaf. The Hokage sat at his office desk, a pile of paperwork lay at his side. The Sandaime stared at the three that stood before him. So what do you have to report? The three stood still until Genma stepped forward. Hokage-sama, from our observations we determined that his ninjutsu is high, taijutsu is average, and his abilities are unknown. His ninjutsu has a wide variety, from what we have observed. He is level-headed when he is fighting, and is careful with withholding information. He can strategize a fairly built tactic in battle that allows him to overwhelm his opponent, thus allowing him to defeat an enemy effectively. Though this is important, there was something that happened during the battle that raised our attention. The Hokage raised an eyebrow at the last statement. What might that be? Asuma was the one to step forward this time, staring intently at the Hokage. It appears he was able to stop the Sharingan from copying his techniques. Sandaime's eyes widened, but he quickly regained his serious expression. How did he do that? Asuma shook his head while sighing. We're not sure, he wouldn't tell us, but by the way he talked about it, he seemed to know. Sarutobi nodded. I will have to confront him about that later. Now what rank do you believe he is at? Kurenai was the first to speak. Honestly, I believe him to be at a rank. The only thing is we don't know how well he can lead a mission. This is a necessary ability for all Jounins to have. Genma continued, I also believe Naruto to be of rank. The thing is he also won't have the raw experience other Jounins have regarding missions, teamwork, and other things of the like. Asuma was next, his cigarette pushed to the side of his mouth in order to speak. I also believe Naruto has the potential to be of the rank. The thing is we simply don't know enough about him. The Hokage closed his eyes in silent contemplation, interlacing his fingers as well. The three watched him intently, awaiting his answer. The Sandaime sighed heavily, before refocusing his gaze on the three. I have come to the decision to promote Naruto to rank, however I will assign him an A-rank mission to learn of his leading capabilities. The ones to accompany him will be. Locking his gaze between the red-eyed, black-haired, and the smoking joint in the Sandaime continued, Kurenai, Kakashi, and Asuma. Any questions? So you're saying this 11-year-old boy we don't know much about is going to be my squad leader in an A-rank mission? Kurenai asked, bewilderment etched into her voice, which the Sandaime confirmed with a simple nod of his head. Yo. A familiar voice chirped from the window of the office. The Hokage acknowledged his presence. Kakashi, I see that you were released from the hospital. Hi, the silver-haired answered, I wasn't that badly wounded. I know for a fact that I underestimated him. Which I remember warning you about. The Sandaime chuckled, making the Jounin's ego slightly suffer. Hi, but, Naruto, if I remember correctly, is the Kyuubi container, is he not? Kakashi asked casually, as though he were talking about the weather. Kurenai, Genma, and Asuma, visibly tensed however. Hi, does that information bother you? Sandaime asked not only Kakashi, but the others as well. None of them spoke. Sandaime smiled when no one answered his question. Good, Naruto has a very tough life, and I would appreciate it if you didn't make it any harder. Just remember this, his smile may fool you, but inside he is hurting in a way that would drive anyone insane. I just wonder how he stays as sane as he is. Now, Kakashi, the Hokage spoke, you and Kurenai are going to be assigned an A-rank mission, with Naruto as your squad leader. But Hokage-sama, Kakashi interjected. Let me finish, Haddock-san, the Hokage said, as if he was expecting to be interrupted. This mission assignment is going to evaluate Naruto's rank further. I will brief you, Kurenai, Asuma, and Naruto in the mission room, regarding your assignment tomorrow. You are all dismissed, except you Kakashi, I need to speak with you. Genma, Asuma, and Kurenai all departed in a cloud of smoke through Shunshin. Kakashi stood in place, as the Hokage stared at him with the authority one given the title of Hokage should present. Kakashi, I understand from the others' reports of the fight that Naruto has the ability to disable a part of the Sharingan eye. Sandaime said firmly, his eyes unlingering from the present before him. Hi, that is certain. He disabled the part of the Sharingan which allows me to copy one's techniques, and I could have sworn something else seemed off as well. Does it still function properly now? The Hokage asked. Kakashi nodded his head in a silent affirmative while crossing his arms in front of his chest. I made sure it still worked before leaving the hospital. I used it to memorize my medical report on the side of my bed. Sure enough, it's fully functional now. The Sharingan user explained. The Sandaime fell silent as he thought over the information he had just received. After jostling with the info in his head, he brought his attention back to Kakashi. I need you to inform Naruto that I need him in my office within the hour. Kakashi nodded and was about to leave via the window when the Sandaime spoke again. Wait. Kakashi stopped halfway through the window. Sarutobi chuckled as he spoke. I advise you not to break entry into Naruto's apartment if he is not there. We had a very unfortunate incident with my last messenger when he tried to open the door. Kakashi cocked an eyebrow in interest, but then nodded and left. Sarutobi leaned back against his chair and put his infamous pipe in his mouth. He relaxed in his chair, thinking over today's events when a woman walked in, with her face hidden behind an oh-so-terrible stack of papers. The Hokage shuddered when the woman dropped the giant stack of papers atop his desk, ordering him to get it done. She then left the office to a very depressed-looking Hokage, who was only thinking about his retirement at the moment. Naruto had just woken up from his short nap and walked into the living room. He took the small scroll from his pocket and bit his thumb at the same time. Opening it, he drew the blood from his thumb to streak the scroll words from top to bottom. A small puff of smoke was created, and with it Naruto's notebook, brush, and paint. He set the brush and paint on his desk because he had no need for them at the moment. He grabbed a pencil from his desk and sat on his couch. He flipped through many pages of seals and their details until he reached the one on his wrists. It showed a sketch of the seal along with labels and descriptions. He wrote down that its first trial run was a success. He made sure that the ones on his wrists were an identical match to the sketch in his notes before wiping the seals off his wrists. He then began to sketch ideas for new seals. It was during his seal studying that he was interrupted by the knocking on his door. Naruto grudgingly sat up and walked over to the door and opened it. Standing before him was none other than Hada Kakashi. Naruto looked at him tiredly, showing that he didn't exactly want to be bothered. "What do you want?" Kakashi ignored his signs of rudeness and continued speaking in his familiar drawl. "Hokage-sama requests that you come to his office." "Again?" Naruto asked in an annoyed manner. He wasn't too keen on getting all these orders, with little to no rest in between. "Hi. Now if you excuse me, I have some important literature to get to." With that said and done, the porno lover disappeared in a puff of smoke. What is this world coming to? Naruto thought as he locked his door and began walking to the Hokage's office. After walking some distance through the streets, he began to feel discomforted by the glares and took to the rooftops. On the rooftops he decided to go at a faster pace and became a blur to civilian eyes. He reached the Hokage Tower in a matter of a few minutes and walked right past the guards at the base of the building. He walked up the wooden steps and down a hallway, finally spotting a door being guarded by two. The one on the left side of the door was apparently the supposed messenger that he had accidentally blown up because an angry scowl was directed at him. He had spiky hair and a strip of wrapping across the middle of his face. This Chunin's facial expression just showed obvious amusement towards himself and his partner. The spiky-haired on the right was the one to speak to the blonde ninja. "Are you Uzumaki Naruto?" Naruto grinned sheepishly as the glare from the left worsened. "That I am." "One moment please, the Hokage is in a short meeting with an important figurehead and it should be over any minute now." "I can wait." Naruto turned his attention to the left side of the door. Sorry about the explosion thing, it was just a matter of personal security. No hard feelings, right?" They looked at him sternly before breaking into a warm smile. "No hard feelings, I can tell that it was an accident, though I assure you I won't be testing your security anytime soon." Heh, Naruto grinned sheepishly. "Yes, sorry about that, anyway may I know the name to which I have the pleasure of speaking to?" "Well put," he remarked impressively. "I will try." Naruto smirked. "My name's Izumo, and my partner next to me is Katetsu," Izumo said, while gesturing his hand in his partner's direction when introduced. Naruto gave a friendly grin at the two when the door opened between them, revealing a tall man. His eyes were the pupil-less pale lavender eyes of a Hyuga. Naruto recognized him from his childhood as Hyuga Heishi. From the way he gave Naruto a displeasing frown, it was safe to say he still had a stick lodged up his ass, a thick one at that. The group stayed silent until Heishi was out of sight. "Well," Katetsu spoke up, "I guess you can see the Hokage now." "Thanks, it was a pleasure meeting you both," Naruto said as he walked between them and stepped inside the Hokage's office. Naruto took a quick glance around the office, but it was odd to say he didn't see Sandaime. "Hey old man," Naruto called in a rather loud manner. "Over here," was the reply Naruto got from a voice concealed behind the mounds of paperwork stacked atop the Hokage's desk. Naruto casually walked towards him. Didn't see you there for a moment," he said rather sheepishly. The Hokage sighed. "Well, paperwork is overflooding me today, it can be cruel like that at times." "The times? Isn't it always cruel?" True. Anyway, down to business since it appears I do not have much time to talk with all this unfinished paperwork to do. I was wondering why you would bother me so soon," Naruto said rather tiredly. He was hungry too. He didn't have time to eat lunch and it was now around dinner time. "Yes, well, I was hoping you would explain how you were able to disable part of Kakashi's Sharingan during the match. It is important that you answer my question honestly." From the look Naruto was given, he could safely say that he wanted the answer to his question. Well basically I created a seal of my own creation. It is designed to not disable the Sharingan, but fool it. The Sharingan, from what I know, memorizes the opponent's moves by not memorizing the moves themselves, but rather the chakra patterns. Chakra patterns are waves of the tiniest bit of chakra emitted from the body during any movement. The chakra emitted in these waves is so small that people normally don't notice that they're using chakra at all. The waves emitted from movement have unique sizes and lengths that are then memorized by the Sharingan. This therefore memorizes the moves, forms, or jutsus the opponent uses. This is different from seeing chakra pathways like a Hyuga. Their eyes cannot pick up such a small amount of chakra. The Sharingan eyes can see these chakra patterns and memorize them. However, the Sharingan user themselves cannot see these chakra patterns because the brain does not process that part of the eyesight because it is either non-important or too small of an importance. My seal simply blocks those chakra patterns from the Sharingan, thus the Sharingan user's memorization is fooled and the user won't know how. This is not all it prevents, however, it also stops a Sharingan user from being able to predict my next movements. So actually it disables two parts. Naruto finished, looking at the Sandaime whose jaw had basically hit the floor. Naruto, you know how to use seals to that level of understanding? The Hokage asked, getting a simple nod in reply from the young blonde. Sarutobi fell back in his chair and gave a heavy sigh, well thinking I'm too old for this shit. The Hokage brought his gaze upon the young blonde, who he thought was an exact splitting image of his father. The most unmistakably noticeable characteristics were the hair, eyes, and that infamous grin. That along with the other things they had in common is enough for the Sandaime, but no, now they have seal making in common. This way of thinking brought him to a question. Naruto, did Jiraiya teach you about seals? No. He doesn't even know about my hobby. I'd also appreciate it if this information doesn't leave this room because the village and especially the council might go and accuse me of trying to unseal the Kyuubi or other bullcrap like that. Naruto said somewhat angrily, knowing the village's train of thought would probably lead them to that conclusion. I understand, but would you mind if I told Jiraiya? No, not at all. The only reason I kept my hobby a secret from him is so that he wouldn't try and help me with it. I really wanted to learn about seals myself. Naruto explained. I see how long it took you to create this seal in particular. Sandaime asked in curiosity, putting his pipe in his mouth. Well, approximately 2 hours. The Hokage nearly choked on his pipe. The keyword in that sentence is nearly. Once the Hokage managed to regain his bearings, he told Naruto he had too much excitement for one day and would like to close this meeting for some thought. Naruto got up and was about to leave when the Sandaime raised a hand to stop him. Naruto, hold on a second. What, old man? Naruto asked tiredly and obviously rudely as well. I forgot to tell you that you will be leading an A-rank mission and you will be the squad's leader. Your squad is composed of two by the names of Yuhi Kurenai, Sarutobi Asuma, and Hada Kakashi. You will not get your vest, but you have acquired rank. Leading a squad on an A-rank mission is unheard of. Naruto commented, but the Hokage shook his head. On this mission you will be a stand and join, which means this mission is to further evaluate your rank and you will have the power of A on this mission. If you show the qualities of A on this mission, then you will be promoted when you return. You will be briefed on your mission tomorrow at 10 AM, by that time I want you and your team in the mission room. That means you have to gather your team and bring them there on time. The Hokage finished explaining. Could you give me their addresses? Naruto asked, a sheepish grin present on his face. Right, I was prepared for that. Sandaime took a scrap of paper off his desk and handed it to Naruto, who took the paper and looked at its contents. This gives you both Kurenai's and Kakashi's home addresses. Asuma will be notified by me, since he is my son, so don't worry about him. The paper listed the addresses of both members of his squad, along with basic directions. Thanks, old man, he said while shoving the piece of paper in the pocket of his pants. That said and done, he left the tower and headed home. The beeping sound filled the room, bouncing off the walls and disrupting the once peaceful silence. Naruto's face crunched up frustratingly when he tried to turn off the blaring noise blindly. His hand flailed around until he finally hit the alarm, bringing the quiet peace back to his world. Naruto groggily got up and rubbed his eyes in an attempt to open them. He sat still until his vision began to focus and hopped out of his bed. He checked the time on the accursed alarm before going to the kitchen to eat. The clock had read 6:01 AM, which would give him plenty of time to get himself ready, find his team, and meet in the mission room on time. He walked over to his fridge and looked over the possible items for breakfast. He decided on an apple, toast, and milk. His simple choices were within his budget, which would surely rise once he got some missions done. He dropped 2 pieces of toast in a cheap toaster he had bought on his shopping trip and began eating the apple while seated at a small table. Once he had finished eating, he got dressed into his black sleeveless shirt and pants before throwing over his crimson trench coat and standing in front of the mirror. He then tied the Hittite around his neck. He checked over himself before leaving the apartment room and locking his door securely behind him. He left the building before taking out the scrap of paper that was stored in one of his pants pockets. He memorized Yuhi Kurenai's address before shoving it back into his pocket. He walked several blocks until he had reached the given address, ignoring the piercing glares directed at him the entire walk. He rang the doorbell of the elegant abode. Gardening lined the front of the house, giving it the feeling of peace. The door opened, revealing a thin woman with black hair and crimson eyes. "Kurenai-san, I presume that you were informed about a mission we are supposed to get." She nodded her head firmly before speaking. "I didn't guess it would be this early," however she said, checking the clock behind her that read 8 AM before shutting the door behind her. "Well, I don't want to be late, we need to be at the mission room by 10 AM, but before we do we need to get Kakashi-san," Naruto said, making Kurenai laugh as she began walking. While she laughed, Naruto cocked an eyebrow in confusion and caught up to her before asking, "What's so funny?" Her laughing ceased before she responded, "You're going to get Kakashi and make it on time? You might as well try to beat a cage." "Why's that?" he asked confusingly. "Kakashi's never on time, he is about 3 hours late to everything." "Kurenai," she said in an annoyed tone. "Is that so?" Naruto said more to himself than to Kurenai. "Well, I'm going to make him come on time." Kurenai winced at the volume of his voice. "You're very loud, you know that right?" "So?" Naruto said in puzzlement. Kurenai frowned and rubbed her temples in frustration. This kid was striking her nerves already. Naruto pulled out the slip of paper and studied it before pocketing it once again. As they walked, Kurenai noticed all the nasty glares she got from people. She was perplexed at first, but then remembered who she was walking with. To despise without an adequate reason was one of her pet peeves. This made her angry at the villagers for doing such a thing and respect Naruto a little more for putting up with such treatment. They arrived at the apartment building where Kakashi resided. Naruto checked a watch he had in his pocket, noting they had about an hour and a half before the appointed time. They walked to the room number and Naruto knocked on the door. They waited for a minute before a sleepy spiky-haired figure answered the door, opening it slightly. "May I help you?" Kakashi asked tiredly. "Kakashi-san, we need to be at the mission room by 10 AM, so get ready and we'll leave together," Naruto said, watching as the spiky-haired figure nodded and shut the door. Naruto turned around and smiled at Kurenai. "See? Piece of cake." Kurenai shook her head, "It's not over yet." Naruto looked at her confusingly, but sat down in the hallway and waited and waited and waited. "Ah. It's been 45 minutes. What's taking him so long?" Naruto got up and knocked on the door rather hard. After waiting for a minute, Naruto grinned mischievously. Kurenai watched as a large grin played across Naruto's face and began to feel uneasy, but decided to just sit back and watch the events play out. "Kakashi-san, if you don't get your ass out here, I'm blowing this door to smithereens and dragging you out here by force," Naruto yelled at the door while checking to see if it was locked or not. Of course it was locked. After waiting a minute, Naruto took out a handmade explosive note, lit it with chakra, attached it to the door, and fled at high speed. Kurenai watched as Naruto placed an explosive note on the door and fled alongside him. Once they fled a good distance down the hall, Kurenai turned to him. "What the hell was that?" Naruto glanced at her infuriated look before replying, "A small explosive note I created, its destructive force is smaller than the ordinary one." Kurenai huffed angrily. "That's not what I meant." Before Kurenai could say anything else, Naruto dashed towards the doorway. He stepped atop the unhinged door and observed the apartment room. Kakashi was sitting on his couch, directly across from the angry blonde, with eyes the size of dinner plates. "You didn't have to go and do that to my door." "Kakashi-san," Naruto began, "I don't tolerate lateness when it can be avoided. I see that you are ready, so we will be leaving." Kakashi didn't budge from his spot but chose to stare at the boy. "Now!" Naruto shouted. Kakashi jumped from the spot on his couch and dashed out the apartment door, right past Naruto. Not wanting any more of the blonde's wrath, he didn't exactly expect the boy to actually blow up his apartment door with an explosive note nonetheless. Kurenai giggled as Kakashi walked up to her, a defeated look plastered on his face. When he stood next to her, she heard him mumble something around the lines of psychotic blonde. Naruto walked out of Kakashi's apartment and grinned at the two. "Now that we are all attending, we should head over to the mission room at the Hokage's tower." The two nodded dumbly as Naruto walked past them. Kakashi turned to Kurenai when Naruto was out of hearing distance. "What the hell is this kid's problem? He destroyed my door because he didn't want to be late. This kid is a complete nut job," Kakashi said, exasperation clearly defined in his voice. Kurenai snickered, "I think the kid only does crazy stuff when you get him annoyed. So for now on, I will try not to be late." "Not be late?" Kakashi took pride in being late. Kakashi, to say the least, did not like the blonde. He took away his pride in being late, what more could he do to him? Kurenai, on the other hand, found herself beginning to respect the blonde more and more. Kakashi's tardiness irritated her to no end, and to see Naruto deal with this problem in such a manner only made her begin to respect him. "Kurenai-san, Kakashi-san, let's move," the blonde called from the bottom of the staircase. The two caught up to him and began following him towards the Hokage Tower. When they reached the Hokage Tower, they entered and began walking towards the mission room. They found the double doors that led to the mission room. Naruto pushed open both doors with ease and looked around. The mission room had a long table where the Hokage sat behind. They seemed familiar to Naruto, but he couldn't remember where he had met him. He had his face buried in scrolls so he couldn't get a good look at his face anyway. Smoking a cigarette, stood by the Hokage as well, and Naruto guessed this character was Asuma. The Hokage had the pipe in his mouth when he saw the three walk in. The three walked up to the table, Naruto in the lead. "Hey old man." Naruto greeted, with a large grin spread across his face. The Sandaime exhaled a puff of smoke and looked at the other two. Both seemed fixated on the blonde, wondering how he got away with showing such disrespect to the Hokage. "So old man, what's the mission?" Naruto continued. The Hokage opened up the A rank scroll that lay near the others marked D rank to B rank. S rank missions could only be issued by the Hokage himself and usually in secret. He looked at the missions going down the row until he found the one he needed and crossed off the assignment before rolling the scroll back up and placing it back on his desk. The Hokage turned his gaze towards the group as he began to speak. "This mission is being issued by myself. Our scouts have spotted a camp near our border with Rain. The camp seems to be mostly composed of bandits or renegade samurai, but there is also a high possibility of a few missing nuns. Your assignment is to exterminate the camp and dispose of the enemies. Naruto, do you by any chance have the Konoha bingo book?" "Hi, I got from Hiro-sen a while back. He told me it would be wise to know who my enemies are. I also know some of the missing nuns in the other nations." Naruto explained. Kurenai, Kakashi, and Asuma were wondering the same thing though. Who the hell was Hiro-sen? "I see," the Sandaime said. "Well, I leave this mission to your team to complete." It was at this time the person sitting next to him decided to speak up, tearing his gaze from the scrolls he was reading to the Hokage without looking at the group. "Hokage-sama, are you actually serious about sending a kid to lead an A-rank mission?" "Iruka, this kid is the same rank as you and is a stand-in junction. I would advise you not to underestimate his abilities," the Hokage said sternly. "Iruka? Iruka-sensei?" Naruto questioned, looking them up and down. "Wow, I had a hard time recognizing you. I mean, I was only at the academy for 2 weeks before I left." Then turned to face the young blonde, Naruto. "Well, it's been a while to wait. Naruto, you're leading this mission. What the hell kind of alternate dimension was I dropped in?" "Very funny," Naruto mocked me. "I've changed more than you know over the years." "Actually I do know," Iruka pointed out, then pointed at his clothing. "No bright orange clothing, that itself is a major improvement." Naruto grinned sheepishly before turning to his team. "We are meeting at Konoha's west gate in an hour and a half. You are to grab your provisions and meet me there. Kakashi-san, you have to be there on time, otherwise I'm shoving an explosive note up your ass, is that clear?" Kakashi nodded his head while giving out a defeated sigh. One thing he didn't want to do is enrage the blonde, seeing as he might do what he said. The previous event made him not doubt his words. Before Naruto left the mission room, Iruka called him. "Yeah? Have you visited Hinata yet?" Iruka asked. Naruto shook his head sadly. "Not yet, but I plan to wait until I can bypass her father. If I were to see her now, it might ruin my plans that I have created beforehand. Don't worry, I plan to in time. I'm just making sure because she does miss you. I know, she is my friend after all." Naruto left the mission room. His team split apart after leaving the Hokage Tower. Naruto went to his apartment and sealed many of his weapons and necessities in scrolls. He added a little more weight to his seals while pocketing the various scrolls. This included the scroll with his seal-making equipment. After he had gathered his resources, he left towards the west gate, intent on leading a successful A-ranked mission. Thanks for watching my video, and make sure to check out the author of this fanfic, link is in the description. See you next time, till then sayonara.